the ultimate meditation is to rest imperturbably. So with many teachings, like for example, with the Buddha's teachings, there are 84,000 different teachings. So with so many teachings, we wonder, well, how did this come about? You know, how did the Buddha come up with 84,000 teachings? He must have been a very busy man. I can barely get my laundry done and my food cooked every day. Here's somebody coming up with 84,000 teachings. Well, the Buddha, he lived for a long time as an awakened being. In other words, he knew the true nature of his being for 50 years of his life. And one of the most important instructions the Buddha ever gave was the following. He said to everyone, do not write down anything that I say. Why did he say that? Because he was a very wise man. And he could see that if people started writing down what he said, there would be 84,000 interpretations of Buddhism. He was an emanation of compassion, like we all are, an emanation of wisdom and compassion. And this is what the Buddha taught, that everyone is an emanation of wisdom and compassion, that this is our true nature. So the Buddha, because he lived so long, 50 years, and met thousands and thousands of people, way more than 84,000 people, when he would talk to a person, he would just give them whatever they needed, whatever would support them directly. That's what the Buddha did as an emanation of compassion. He didn't try to get every person to do it according to the way he saw it. He saw that some people had a disposition that would be responsive to one way of teaching, and another person would have a disposition that would be responsive to another way of teaching. And so this is very interesting, but his overall foremost instruction was don't write down anything that I say. And the other thing was to rely on your own experience. But he said, what I have to say is philosophical, but you can test it in your own experience. And that is the only way you can know about it, if you test it in your own experience. So he was doing just what he had done. He had relied on his own experience to get in touch with and gain familiarity with his own nature. And so he suggested that other people do the same thing, knowing that that's really the only way to realize one's true nature. Now, among all of these 84,000 approaches within Buddhism, there's only one where there is the teaching of resting imperturbably, even though this was the Buddha's primary teaching, to rest in equanimity, to rest imperturbably, to rest as awareness. This was the Buddha's primary teaching, and it was the teaching that he gave himself when he sat under the bodhi tree, when all else had failed him, all these different teachings that he had been participating in, 3 different teachers he had participated with, when these failed him completely and he was almost dead from having undergone physical austerities, he said, no, none of this is the way. And I'm going to sit down under this tree until I realize. All of his disciples left him and said, so long. You're not going to teach us what we want to hear from you, so we're going to leave now. Then he just sat under the bodhi tree, dejected, abandoned, and he had a lot of other feelings too, I'm sure, because he had given up everything. He had abandoned his wife and child. He had abandoned his kingdom and his father, the king, and his mother, the queen, where he was supposed to stick around and become the king. And so he was sitting there with a lot of feelings, just like any human being would have. And then he had gone out to look for an end to suffering. And he still hadn't found it. So he probably had a lot of feelings like, wow, did I do the right thing? Was this the thing to do? Can I really find the cessation of suffering? I've been looking around and I can't find it anywhere. I know that it exists, but I still haven't found it. So he sat down under the Bodhi tree, and what is described about the Buddha there is described in language that was used at that time. So what the Buddha's language and the language that he used at the time, he talked about maras in the Great Freedom and he talked about phenomena. Well, in the Great Freedom Teaching, both what are called maras and phenomena by the Buddha are called points of view. So we could say the Buddha just sat there with all his points of view, no matter what they were. All of his thoughts, all of his emotions, all of the experiences from his life. And he rested in equanimity. He rested as equanimity while all of these appeared. He wasn't seduced by any of them. He didn't want to be the dog chasing its tail anymore. He just relaxed and he let all of the points of view be as they are. No matter what they are, no matter what appeared, he just let it all be as it is. And if any of you have ever read the story, you know that he had many points of view that came up. And who knows how long it lasted. Different historians say different lengths of time. But as he sat there, everything visited him, all of his lust, all of the points of view that he had been neutralizing through all of these other practices, they came up and greeted him. But you see, in all the other practices he followed, he had tried to do different things with the points of view. As a prince, he had indulged his points of view. And then he took up the route of replacing his points of view with positive points of view, meritorious activity, and the development of virtue. And then he avoided his points of view. He tried that too. He became celibate and lived in solitude and practiced austerity. So he tried all these different things on his points of view. But lastly, he sat under the Bodhi tree. And in flawless awareness, he saw all that appeared as flawless awareness until to him all was flawless awareness. That's all there is. This timeless awareness that is the essence of everything. And then he described that as Buddha nature. And the word Buddha in Sanskrit means awakened. So he was called Buddha because he was awakened, not because that was his name. And he just said to everyone, the awakened nature is your own nature. It's already within you. And he departed from his background in Hinduism and what was being taught. He said, not only Brahmins can be in touch with the awakened nature and gain familiarity with it, everyone can be. And then he said the most shocking thing of all, even women can be awakened. Can you believe it? What a radical. Well, lots of people thought that he was way out there, Not everyone was seeing him as the great being he has become. And so, what he found in resting under the Bodhi tree is that all points of view are equal and that no point of view leads anywhere. So how could any point of view, like austerities, avoiding points of view, replacing points of view with better points of view, how could any of them lead anywhere? All these things that he had been trying had led nowhere in his own experience. And it was only when he rested in the equanimity of his own being, his awakened nature, that he began to see that everything that appeared was equal. And he didn't just have lovely things appear. In fact, the story of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree is about all the negative states that appeared. He was overpowered with all kinds of negative states. And in a lot of what's written, it's portrayed as demons. So it sounds like there were demons, actual demons that appeared. Mara was appearing in all these illusory forms, and he just sat there. But a way we can talk about it in contemporary language that everyone can understand is just to say that all of these points of view appeared within the all-encompassing pure view of the Buddha's awareness. And as he rested imperturbably, then more and more of those were resolved. He wasn't chasing after them anymore, like the dog chasing after its tail. And he wasn't renouncing them either. He was just resting as the entirety of the basic space of each of those points of view. He didn't need to do anything about them, not either indulge them or renounce them. He didn't need to discriminate about any point of view that appeared in any way at all. So, yes, resting imperturbably, that is an incredible teaching. Now, does it mean that we don't do anything but sit under a tree and rest? No, because that isn't what the Buddha taught either. He said it doesn't matter whether you're sitting down, walking around, standing on your head, flying through space, whatever it is, rest imperturbably. However you go about your life, rest imperturbably. So you see, in this, nothing is excluded in resting imperturbably. Perhaps you've been sitting in meditation retreats where you've been watching your breath in one-pointed concentration, and now you can watch your breath in one-pointed concentration and rest imperturbably while doing so. There's nothing that needs to be excluded. And certainly the result of any kind of meditation is meditative stability throughout day and night. That's the goal of all meditative practice, so that the practice isn't just on the cushion, it is pervasive. It's all pervasive, day and night. This is what meditation practices lead to. Now, the ultimate meditation, which is to rest imperturbably as awareness, guarantees this very swiftly because it doesn't split meditation out into just one part of the day. From the beginning, there's resting imperturbably for short moments repeated many times until it becomes spontaneous and automatic. And this resting imperturbably is entirely uncontrived. In other words, we're not trying to contrive a special time when we rest. We just rest in whatever way is easeful to us. Like some people just come here repeatedly, and that's all they do. They come here repeatedly. And just in this environment, more and more of the resting essence of awareness becomes obvious. Other people couple that with resting naturally. In other words, a point of view comes up, just like with the Buddha sitting under the bodhi tree. And when the point of view comes up, it's rest that is relied upon rather than chasing after the point of view and taking it to be something in its own right. When we do that, then we fatigue ourselves